It's 1:00 though, it's 1:01, and we want to go ahead and get started. And so first we're going to let folk know kind of what the agenda is going to be. We want to welcome everyone. We're delighted that you've joined us for this webinar on intentional parenting. I'm Michelle Booth Cole. I serve as the Executive Director of Safe Shores, the DC Children's Advocacy Center. We hope you'll take time and learn a little bit more about us by visiting our website, www.safeshores.org. While people are arriving, please feel free to put in the chat, introduce yourselves, tell where you are, who you are, where you're zooming in from. And also, if you want to answer these questions, please do. And that is, what do you think of when you hear the phrases gentle parenting or intentional parenting? What does that bring to mind for you? So hopefully folk are logging in. We are delighted that there's so much interest around this. We've had a lot of registrants, and we're really pleased about that. So please put things in the chat. And while you're doing that and people are continuing to show up, we are going to let you know what the agenda is today. So I will do introductions to the panelists. We're going to do questions. We're going to show a couple of snippets of videos from Destiny Bennett's social media presence, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the process that supported those videos. And we'll do that for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to go to some of the questions that you attendees have submitted when you registered or put in the chat. We probably won't make it through them all, but we're going to do what we can. We just really want to have a meaningful, relaxed, positive learning conversation. And this is what we hope the village will do, the way we want to show up for children, for parents, caregivers, by learning together. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our fantastic experts. Let's start with Destiny Bennett. Destiny Bennett is an Indigenous Southern California native, mother of 3 boys and wife of 10 years. As a multi-viral digital creator, Destiny has shared her life-based teachings on parenting and marriage and overcoming generational trauma as it relates to the two. Destiny is a best-selling author and homeschool advocate with a heart for community and a mission to inspire and heal. Welcome, Destiny. And Dr. Stacey Patton. Dr. Stacey Patton is an adoptee, child abuse survivor, and former foster youth turned award-winning journalist, author, professor, and nationally recognized child advocate. Her writings on education, race, and child welfare issues have appeared in the New York Times, Washington Post, BBC News, News One, and other outlets. She has appeared on CNN, ABC News, MSNBC, Fox News, Al Jazeera, and Democracy Now! She's the creator of www.sparethekids.com, an online portal designed to teach about the harms of hitting children. She is also the developer, and I'm so excited about this, of a forthcoming 3D medical animation app called When You Hit Me. Dr. Patton is the recipient of the 2023 Distinguished Contribution to Child Advocacy Award from the American Psychological Association. And with that, welcome, Dr. Patton. All right, you guys, unmute yourselves. We're going to start the questions. So here we go.
Hey, y'all. Hey.
I'm ready.
Welcome. This is so delightful. And I'm just so grateful and excited to have 2 such phenomenal women with us today. So let's start. Destiny, what is intentional parenting?
I feel like it's such a broad question, but I will say what intentional parenting is to me. um, I've never been one that's been about labels, and I feel like there's so many different parenting styles out there. And so when I heard the term intentional parenting, that was the one that I felt best described my parenting style. Um, and for me, intentional parenting really is just rooted in being your best self for your child. And if you understand who you are as a person and how you want to interact with the world, how you want to interact with your children, and what type of impact that you want to make on them, that is intentional parenting. It's operating in that best version of yourself. It's having a parenting style that is rooted in respect and being present with your child and being empathetic and being kind and just being the best version of yourself, the person that you would want your child to grow up to be.
Thank you for that. And Stacey, as a child advocate, why is intentional parenting important? Why does it matter?
I think it's important for me. And again, let me just say this. I'm not a parent. I don't pretend to be one. I have never raised a child. As a child advocate, I'm someone who centers children in all of my work. I'm all about, advocating for their dignity and respect and bodily autonomy. But when I think about intentional parenting, I think about it as a strategy that is about teaching rather than punishing children for having problems because they're little, they're learning the world. I believe that it's brain-based. It means understanding where children are cognitively so that we set reasonable expectations for what they can do so that we're not punishing them for things that their brain has not yet equipped them to achieve. I think it's also about promoting attachment, healthy attachment between parents and children. It's about closeness. It's about, like Destiny said, empathy and kindness and compassion. It's not fear-based. It's about encouraging children to express their feelings, and it's about developing emotional literacy. As someone who teaches college students who are on the other end of childhood, I often have to spend a lot of time correcting a lot of, some of the issues we're going to talk about today. So for me, as someone who is educating young people, it's really important that parents start to embrace intentional parenting, gentle parenting, so that when they end up in my classroom and the classrooms of other professors, we can teach, we have a solid foundation to build upon, and we don't have to spend so much time doing corrective work just to get children, young people open to learning and being their best selves.
Thank you. So, Destiny, is there any difference between conscious parenting, gentle parenting, positive parenting, and intentional parenting? There are all these terms that are out there. Is there any major difference?
I think that goes back kind of to the labels. Like I said, it's funny to me, I view it almost as how you have vegan versus vegetarian versus pescatarian. It's like they're all kind of the same with these slight differences. That's how I view them. So when it comes to positive parenting, when it comes to intentional parenting, gentle parenting, I feel like they're all pretty similar. Everyone just has their own version of it. And the reason why I lean more towards intentional parenting is because, in my opinion, it's the one that has the least, I guess you would say, requirements. I've been in a lot of gentle parenting, conscious parenting groups, and there's so many boundaries, I guess you could say, where people are like, well, you shouldn't do it that way. That's not conscious parenting. Or you can't do this if you're a conscious parent. You can't do that. And it's like, it almost feels overwhelming at times, in a sense that you feel like you have to change your entire personality, or you have to change who you are to fit within the realm of what's allowed. And when it comes to intentional parenting, like I said, I feel like it's more so rooted in just being your best self, whatever that looks like for you, and being a healthy parent for your child. The biggest difference I think I've seen, in terms of the four that you listed, in conscious parenting, I feel like that really, I feel like that really came to light with with Dr. Shafali and her books about conscious parenting. And in reading those, I feel like there's a big aspect of it that's rooted in spirituality. And so in talking to other parents about that, there are some parents that don't have necessarily a spiritual journey or connection to their spirituality. So they don't have the same beliefs, and like everyone has their own spirit. Your child has their own spirit. They have their own purpose here on this earth. That's a big part of conscious parenting, is understanding that they are their own spirit. And so for me, I think that that's the biggest difference. But I really love Dr. Shafali, and I love I love that aspect of conscious parenting too. I think that intentional parenting is just more of a universal term.
Yes. And I think the other thing that Dr. Shafali focuses on is the same thing that you do, which is parents regulating themselves, right? And so
Right.
when parents regulate their own emotions and manage themselves, then they're able to show up and support their children in ways that are intentional. Um, Destiny, tell us a little bit about your parenting journey. How did you come to embrace and really start living intentional parenting?
So I would say it goes back to my childhood. My mom did childcare for 18 years out of our home. And so in that, I had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different children and a lot of different parenting styles. And I feel like I got the firsthand experience of being able to see how different parenting styles affected different children. And from a child's point of view, it was kind of like, oh my God, like why is he so mean? Or, why does he talk about those things? Like that's not appropriate, or just all these different observations that I had as a child. But as I started to come into adulthood, it was like putting the pieces together, like, oh, I see how, because his parent was that way, now I see why he responded this way when this happened. And so I feel like I got an early view of those type of things, and it really influenced my passion for working with children and just understanding the child's mind. I studied early childhood development when I went to college, and then I ended up having to drop out because I got pregnant with my son. And so I was really kind of feeling demotivated about that. I really wanted to be a preschool teacher originally. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to continue studying at home. Like I have a kid, I can observe my own child. And so I feel like that kind of prompted my journey into like, what kind of parent do I want to be? How can I incorporate these things that I've learned into how I'm raising my son and what his upbringing is going to be like? And it didn't start out the way that it is now. It's definitely been a journey. For example, with my first son, my oldest son, he is the only one that I can actually say that I used to pop him. And I'm ashamed to say that, but I did. I was that parent where I was just like, that's what we do. That's what I'm used to. That's what my family does. And so this is how I punish my child. I was that parent that I used to put him in timeout, because that's just what I knew. And the more I continued to study on my own, I was like, oh my God, that's not what I want. That's not how the type of parent I want to be. And it made me think about why is that my first nature to do that? And when I thought about it, it was like, well, that's my environment. That's how my family operates. That's how the other people in my community operate. And so until I really took in the information to want to do something differently, or to learn something differently, that's when I got inspired to want to do things differently. And through that journey, it's still a journey. It's every day I'm learning new things that I want to be as a mom, or learning new ways that I want to parent my boys. And I just became so passionate about it that I wanted to share that with others, because you don't really realize how deeply rooted you are in your own trauma when you don't have an outside source or someone else to show you something different.
I love the fact that it's about the learning, right? And when we know better, we do better, right? And you sought out kind of the knowledge. You're like, I don't want to parent like this. And so you understand, like, they don't give you a manual when you leave the hospital, or they don't like say, okay, all they require is you have a car seat, right? And so I think part of the lesson that I'm hearing you share is that parents have to do the learning. We have to understand, parents have to do the research, understand child development, understand why a 2-year-old can't be expected to sit still, right? All those kinds of things. So I love the fact that it was a journey. and you acknowledge that, but you sought to do better.
Yeah.
And you are, and now you're sharing it.
It would have been so much easier if I had a manual from the hospital. Stacey, maybe we should collaborate on a hospital manual.
Hey, I hear something brewing. I love it. Safe Stores will support it. That would be fantastic. I know I could have used your book when my 3 children were little. Destiny, I love this book. I love it. I love it. So it's good stuff. Stacey, tell us about your journey. How did you come to be an advocate? How did you come to this part of your life's work?
Well, Michelle, I'm case number KC114343 from New Jersey's child welfare system. I'm an adoptee and a child abuse survivor. And I spent the first 5 years of my life in a foster home in East Orange, New Jersey. I was never hit in that foster home. But then when I made the transition to my adoptive parents' house, they were African-American, middle class, suburban, fiercely religious, folks. This was the first time anybody ever put their hands on me. And it was devastating to have an adult slap me. And so this behavior continued all the way through the waiting period for my adoption to be finalized. And all around me in my adoptive parents' Black family and community, this is what people did. They whooped children. They preached about it. They joked about it. There were hair salon conversations about it. Every Black child I knew got hit by their parents. And then there was my adoptive mother's justifications. I do this to, keep you safe. I do it because I love you. I do it because I don't want you to get pregnant, as a teenager. I do this so the white man won't beat you, so the white man won't kill you. She was always talking about the white man. And I was like, who is this white man she keeps talking about? Is it Bob Barker? Alex Trebek, right? Ronald Reagan. I didn't know who this elusive white man was that she was trying to protect me from. And when the reality is the only person who was hurting me, who I thought was going to kill me someday, was my Black adoptive mother, who was saying she was doing this for love. And I came to her. So adoption was my protective factor in this abusive relationship because she didn't get me as an infant. So I never formed an attachment with her. And so it harmed any potential for me to form a healthy attachment with her each time she was hitting me. And so from early on, I was like, this does not feel like love. I hate you. I don't love you. I can't wait to run away. And so I eventually did. The first time when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and then again when I was 12. So I ended up in the foster care system in New Jersey. And then eventually I was too bougie for foster care. So I got into boarding school. And so I was like, I'm gonna write a book about this. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life trying to convince people, especially Black people, to stop beating their kids. So that's how I came to this work. And every day I wake up and I look in the mirror and I see these extension cord marks on my face. They're my fleshy braille that tell this story. And they're a reminder to me that I have to do this work because I don't want other children to grow up with scars on their body or those memories etched, in their mind. So this is how and why I came to this work.
Wow. Fleshy braille. Wow. So that leads me to the next question for you, Stacey. I've got your book here in front of me. I've read it in parts. It's amazing. And your title kind of asks the question, why won't whooping children save Black America?
Because it never has. A lot of Black folks falsely believe that whipping children is a Black thing. It's not. When you study history, and I'm talking about not just African-American history from the plantation forward here, I'm not even talking about West Africa, pre-colonial West Africa. To understand corporal punishment, its historical genesis and evolution, you have to go to Europe. So I'm talking like 2,000 years of European history. This is where this ritualistic violence comes from. Beating a Black child is perhaps the whitest thing you can do to destroy a child, physically, intellectually, emotionally. It's not native to us. And so there's no evidence in pre-colonial West African cultures or traditions of this kind of ritualistic violence against, kids. And other indigenous cultures, it's the same story. So people have this myth that this is something people across time and space have always done. It's not true. It's a gift of colonization, a gift of slavery. And I'm being facetious when I say gift. It's colonized parenting, and it's trauma. And it is a historical echo. It is a continuation of Massa's family traditions. There's a viral video going around now of a young woman saying that we're making Massa proud. She actually took that from my work. And this is a message that I've long, given to folks. And we have this belief that if we beat our kids, that it'll keep them out of prisons. It'll keep them from racist violence. It'll keep us safe. And it doesn't. When we look at racial disparities in terms of health and wellness and just overall thrivance in our communities, it's not working. If beating children was a prerequisite for African-American success, then we should be ruling this country right now, perhaps the world even. It's not good for us. It's not good for our communities, our families, our overall health.
Thank you. So Destiny, similarly, your book title, the first book, because you just came out with a new one, but your first book is titled Revised, Not Repeated, A Brown Mom's Guide to Breaking Generational Curses in Parenting. Tell us, what generational curses are you trying to break? And while you're doing that, we're going to queue up an example from your social media platform to show you doing intentional parenting in action. And then I want you to talk a little bit about kind of what shows up in that video for you. So first, the question, what generational curses are you trying to break as a parent, Destiny?
So that actually really deeply into everything that Stacey was just saying. And I was going to add to that to say that with everything that Stacey said, it's ironic that so often gentle or intentional parenting is categorized as white parenting, when like just the irony of the entire cycle is just absolutely amazing in the worst way. But all of that, everything that she just spoke on. So the mindset that we have to beat our children, we have to hit our children, that we have to be so aggressive with our children in order to prepare them for the world. That has been the biggest response that I've gotten as a brown mom, is like, if you don't prepare your children for the world, somebody else will. If you don't, rough them up, tough them up, they're not going to be prepared. And it's like, but why? Like, why do you feel like that takes priority over making sure that they can communicate, they have good communication skills, making sure that they know what respect looks like? How are they supposed to respect me if I don't respect them? I feel like it's setting them up for feeling like this is the most they can expect from the world, and that they have to be hard and rock solid in order to go through life. Like, life is so hard when it doesn't have to be that way. There are hard aspects of life, but I feel like we set our children up for failure with that mindset. And it's been such a long-standing trauma in our community. And so those are the prime generational curses that I speak about in my book. But I feel like it goes so much deeper than that. It goes to our diet and the way that we eat. It goes to how disconnected we are from our children because we're working 9 to 5s. And then when we come home, we're too tired to interact with them. So we're disconnected from them. It goes just to being like mindful and being present, and like how much screen time they're consuming, how much screen time we're consuming. There's so many layers of it that I don't even get to touch on in my book, but that is the root of it that I speak on in my book. But I could go on for years about breaking generational curses, because there's so many that I don't even think that we as a community are aware of.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so my fantastic colleagues who are our tech support team, Micah Gowdy and Whitney Baum, can you show us one of Destiny's social media posts about her interaction with one of her children, or more than one, because there are a few?
Attention-seeking behavior in my 3-year-old.
What if there's an emergency? You guys can't communicate. You're too busy arguing. You can't move quickly. What if you guys are in an emergency? You have to pick whether to go right or left, and you have to make a decision: go right or left. Who's the oldest?
Kaya,
What is
if
that
you need
mean?
some attention, you can come over here to me because
What
Daddy's
does that
talking.
mean?
Do you need some attention? Okay, I need you to behave yourself, please.
The second
Okay?
in command.
Please be respectful to
He has
Daddy.
been around. You listen to him. He has more experience than you. He has more experience.
You're not being
than you.
respectful to him.
What?
He's talking to
You
Cash.
learn, right?
Yes, you can kiss me. Come over here.
Good time to follow your brother and give him the respect. In order to be a good leader, you have to be able to show respect to the people who are following you, yes?
Addressing attention.
Oh, okay. So Destiny, tell us a little bit about that process. Attention-seeking behavior is real. It happens not just at 3. Let's take it up. It goes 13, at all the ages, right? So tell us a little bit about how you navigated that.
So one of the things that really changed my view when it comes to attention-seeking behavior, naturally, I brushed it off because it's as a parent, like just being frank, it's annoying. Like it can be very annoying. And oftentimes when we're annoyed, we react to being annoyed, you know. And I realized that a lot of times I wasn't addressing the root of the behavior, which was if they're attention seeking, they want my attention in some way. In some way, they're not feeling like they're getting a sufficient enough of my attention. And sometimes that can just be overwhelming, like when you are already doing so much throughout the day. But I try to look at it from a more positive point of view of like, okay, if I give him my attention, or if I find the time to make time for him to meet the need, then maybe we'll get less of this behavior. And so in that moment, it was like, okay, like Dad's busy. He's he's talking to the other boys. He's disciplining the other boys. How can I support him in this moment? Because obviously he can't give him the attention that he needs, but I can. And so that's pretty much how that moment played out. Is like, okay, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do the right thing. Like, okay, you're not going to do the right thing here. Let me help you through whatever this need that you're having right now.
Mhm. I love the way you persisted, because when you first asked him, he shook his little head. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And then he went back and did the same thing again, right? This is what children do, right? And so you very patiently gave him the option again. And it was an observation you made. You look like you need some attention, right? Why don't you come here and let me give you some? And so it was just, it's beautiful to watch. I know it doesn't happen overnight, but I love the way you did that. Stacey, let's talk a little bit about the myths and the science. So the American Academy of Pediatrics opposes spanking. Its position is that parents and other adult caregivers should use effective discipline strategies for children that do not involve spanking, other forms of corporal punishment, or verbal shaming. So what are the health implications of corporal punishment? And you are deeply rooted in this work right now because you're creating this amazing app. So talk to us about what's real, like what happens when adults hit children.
So a lot of people will say there's a difference between spanking and abuse. And people play semantics, popping, whooping, beatings, spanking. But a child's brain doesn't privilege the hitter's semantics. There are biochemical reactions that happen inside of a child's body that a parent cannot see. And this is a form of toxic stress. So I tell parents there is no difference between a spanking that does not leave any visible signs of injury, a hitting that leaves some physical injury that might be defined by the law, depending on which state you live in, as physical abuse or sexual abuse. All 3 are different types of violations against the body. All 3 are toxic stress events that trigger the exact same biochemical responses in the body that can change the architecture of the brain. So how your child's brain actually grows, the shape that it takes. It can alter It's the brain circuitry. So, you're telling your child's brain how to develop when you're yelling, hitting, threatening, those sorts of things. Corporal punishment, or whatever it is that you call it, is a multi-system, multi-organ process. It affects the pupils, it affects the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, the child's genitals, blood pressure, cognition. All of those things are happening underneath the flesh in ways that you can't see. Recently, I was in a church doing a presentation, a community conversation. There was about 300 people there. And one mother stood up and she says, well, I don't believe you. I spanked my son on the butt, and that's not abuse. So I asked her to come to the front of the church, and people were chuckling because they knew where I was going with this. And I showed her an anatomical view of the buttocks, posterior view. And I said, Mama, what's underneath that? And she's like, well, it's an ass. And so everybody in the church starts laughing, right? And I'm like, yes, this is true, but what's underneath it? And she couldn't answer it. And I turned to the crowd and I said, what's underneath this? No one could answer it. So I changed the view, anatomical, posterior, but the skin extracted back this time. And I said, Mama, look what we have here. Nerves, blood vessels, arteries, went all the way up to spine, to the brain. And I said, there's one particular artery I want you to pay attention to, which is the iliac artery. So when you hit your son on his backside like that, there's instant blood flow. And some of that branches off to his genitals. The only other time you see that kind of genital blood flow is during sexual arousal. And there was an audible gasp in the sanctuary. And she looked at me and she said, you nasty. I'm trying to get my son aroused. I said, I know you're not, Mama, but this is how the body works. We've been so conditioned to think of harm as just something you can see on the surface of the flesh. But when you go underneath the flesh and you understand neurochemicals, when you understand the brain parts, so you understand how stress works, fight or flight response works, how the body is wired by evolution to respond to threats. So like people think, oh, I hit my child because I want to teach them. I'm like, that's not how the brain works. A child cannot take in any new information when faced with a threat. So when you are yelling at your child, threatening them or hitting them, you are a threat to their survival. Adults can make theoretical distinctions between spanking and abuse, but a child cannot, and the body and mind cannot. And so the child goes instantly into fight or flight mode. It's about surviving. It's about the blood going to the extremities, to the heart, to the muscles to prepare to either fight back, which most kids can't, to run, or to freeze. But there's no learning happening here. It's all about just trying to survive.
Wow. The notion of that hormone, the cortisol, the stress hormone, is just powerful. It actually calls to mind the book that just came out by Dr. Arlene Geronimus about weathering, the extraordinary stress of ordinary life in an unjust society. I mean, and it almost sounds like parents who hit children are unintentionally like supporting the weathering of their children's bodies and minds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And then to add to that, and I say this especially to African-American communities, we are already living in a toxic ecosystem. In communities where there are eco hazards, there's dead food, there's neighborhood violence, there's the violence of racism. And we've passed this, we've had these transgenerational inheritances of stress in our bodies. So we're already living in a ecosystem that is not about promoting good health for us, and so that we can live in bodies that have time to heal and can fight off disease. So when you hit your children, when you subject your children to toxic stress, you are participating in that toxic ecosystem. So our job is to try to keep our children's bodies from being flooded by these, toxic hormones, so that they can develop at full capacity, have brains that, develop at full capacity, so they could breathe, so that they could ward off disease, so we don't want to add to the accumulation of all of these, stresses that we've been carrying around in our bodies for centuries in this country.
So Destiny, I know a lot of people they may want to do intentional parenting and don't know how to start or how to make it successful, or um and they think that if they don't hit success the first time, they kind of give up. So just to give some encouragement to parents and caregivers out there, have you ever had a time when intentional parenting isn't successful, didn't work? And what did that moment look like and what did you do? And while you tell us about that, we're going to queue up another one of your videos that reflects, I think, a time when you thought maybe your son wasn't getting to listen the lesson, and then you saw that he was. So tell us about kind of the challenge of intentional parenting.
Yeah, those moments when intentional parenting doesn't work all the time, like multiple times a week. Like I said, I think the beauty of it is like I'm definitely still learning every day. It's a never-ending learning experience because every day my boys are in a different level of their development, a different level of their life than they were the day before. And so we have new challenges, especially with my oldest because he's my first baby. So it's like I'm gonna have a 10-year-old soon, and this will be my first time having a 10-year-old. You know, I've never had a 10-year-old before. I don't know what challenges to expect with a 10-year-old or a preteen or a teenager. So sorry. So I have these experiences all the time, and my biggest thing is that I have to come to terms with the fact that I am not perfect. No parenting style is perfect. It's all a part of incorporating it into our own life experience. And so there's going to be times when it doesn't work. And it may not be that there's something necessarily wrong with the parenting style or wrong with me. My child just may be having a bad day that day. They may just be feeling off. Like I have to have the understanding that, yes, intentional parenting, like, yes, you know, this is the way I want to do it, but also life happens. And the challenges of life are going to be different every day. And so that has been something that's kind of given me peace of mind to not just like, you know, I give up, this doesn't work, you know, just taking it, the ebbs and flows as they come and coming to terms with, hey, if it doesn't work today, maybe it'll work tomorrow. You know, like we might have to do it different today. Maybe today I snapped, like I reacted, I didn't do it the right way. And then coming to the point of forgiving myself and accepting that I'm human and apologizing to my child and, okay, we're going to try it differently tomorrow. I think that the best thing to be able to accept and cope with. It's not always going to work, but it's just a part of the process.
Yeah, and you just answered a question. We're going to queue up a video, but one of the questions in the chat said, once you've acknowledged your faults with hitting your kids, how do you release the guilt? And you talked about just having a bad day and maybe you didn't hit them, but something happened. And I just heard you say you forgive yourself, right?
Definitely. Yeah. I think one of the biggest reasons why people give up on intentional parenting is because something happens that makes them feel guilt. And they're like, I'm not built for this. I can't do this. And seeing social media and seeing all these parents, even myself, I think sometimes gives the illusion that you have to be perfect all the time. You have to do it the right way all the time. But the reality is we're all human. We're all gonna make mistakes. We're all gonna have bad days. That's a part of the human experience. Where the intentional part comes in is that now what? What do you do from that point? How do you move forward in the best and healthiest way for yourself and for your child?
Mm-hmm. And there is no perfection. I love that. Let's see a video. Let's see another example.
About it. Calm down. Come on, Daddy. It's too big. Wait a minute. You get angry that she has get back. I'm not angry that you are.
Wow. Okay. Somebody's cutting onions nearby. Okay. So you said that you didn't think he was getting the lesson. So just give us a little bit, just drop a little gem on how that came about.
That's one of my favorite videos. And for me, that was a lesson for me.
Mhm.
In persistence is everything. There's so many things that I do with my kids or I implement with my kids where I'm like, they're just not getting it, you know? And that was one of those things where I'm like, hey, if you get angry, just take a deep breath, you know, it's okay. And he would explicitly be like, no, I'm not going to take a breath. So I was just like, okay, maybe I need to try a different approach, maybe. But every single time I was persistent. Even when he rejected it, I was still persistent. And so that was the first time that I had ever seen him mimic that. And he wasn't doing it, but he was literally mimicking exactly what I do for him with his cousin. And I was just like, oh my God, if he never takes another, deep breath, angry, like, look at how he's able to help someone else regulate their emotion. Like, that's a whole nother lesson that I wasn't even expecting to teach him. So it was just a really amazing moment.
It was, and I thank you for allowing us to see it and be a part of it. It's so encouraging. And it's a reminder that children live what they learn and they learn what they live, and we have to be consistent and persist, right? Because I've read something about sometimes it takes like 500 times of children hearing something for them to actually absorb it, and that's a lot of times, right? Um,
Right.
yeah. So Stacey, you opened us up by telling us you're not a parent. But what's your response to like that mom who tried to diminish and contradict your advocacy for children and against spanking and corporal punishment by pointing to the fact that you are not a parent? Do you have to be a parent to be a child advocate, to be against hitting children?
No, we were all once children. And I never forgot what it felt like to be a child, to be on the receiving end of somebody hitting me. I just never forgot those experiences. And I wasn't effectively socialized to accept that kind of violence. It didn't work with me. So I didn't grow up holding on to the adult, justifications for being hit. The little girl in me never let me forget the truth about those moments. So I've had to do a lot of growth myself in terms of my responses against people who, use my reproductive life as a way to gaslight me or to say that I don't belong at the table when discussing the treatment of children. I used to have all kinds of clapbacks. Well, if, being a parent is a prerequisite for me to be able to talk about, treating kids with dignity, then don't listen to me. Listen to the thousands of parents who abuse their kids every year, or the few thousand who kill their own children every single year, or, those who sexually abuse their kids every year. Don't listen to me. Or, I'd be a little snarky and say, well, if I wanted to be a mortician who buries the dead, does that mean that I should have died first? If I want to cure testicular cancer, do I need to have testicles and cancer? It's just a way for people to find any excuse. And even if you do have parents, if you are a parent, people will always find something. Well, you have girls, boys are different. There's always going to be something that people use against you. And so what I do is I'm just resolute. I just ground, my advocacy in the science, in the data, in the facts. I don't traffic in the myths. And so I spend less time, going back and forth with those types of people. And I've had to accept as an advocate, there are certain people we're just not going to be able to reach. And so I keep, I keep talking, I keep, grounding in the arguments, because you never know who is actually listening and who will, have a complete paradigm shift because of something that they heard you say that touches them in a powerful way. And it's going to lead to change, which means that some child out there is going to have a better relationship with their parents as they grow up.
Yeah, and we're winding down now. So Stacey, I want you to think about the thought you want to leave our participants with today. And Destiny, I have a question for you that touches on what Stacey said and one of the videos that we saw. The thing about parenting is everybody has an opinion on how you parent, especially sometimes family and friends. So I'm really interested. Tell us what kind of reactions have your family and friends had to your approach to parenting?
I can confidently say that, to my knowledge, I'm the only person in my family that parents in my specific parenting style. My family is very I have a very like silly, goofy, funny family. And so I mean, I guess it's a good thing that most times it's they kind of just laugh things off like, oh yeah, you know her, like she's bougie, she does, she does that white parenting, but in more so of I guess a joking way, not necessarily harmful, intentionally harmful. And I say that to say, like, I've spoken to so many different parents who their family shows up and shows their disapproval in such a different way. I am grateful that most of my family is pretty respectful. Even if they don't agree with my parenting style, they're pretty respectful. Like, okay, do you, sis? There have been times where I've had to kind of advocate for my kids, or I've had to, show up for myself and be like, hey, you don't have to respect it, but or you don't have to like it, but you do have to respect it. Like this is how I'm raising my kids, and I can't allow this, or I can't allow that. And that was harder in the beginning. It was a bigger adjustment because, like I said, this was very new to my family line. No one else is parenting like this. And so over time, it's gotten easier. But I definitely say as being that person in your family that is the one that's breaking generational curses in parenting, you have to have a strong spirit because the community is not going to be there in terms of having that support or even having that family that you can go to be like, how should I handle this? Because that the mentalities are just different. And that's a big reason why I started my community, because number one, I wanted to have the community, the like-minded community. And two, I wanted to provide the like-minded community because I know there's so many others there who do not have families that support this parenting style.
Mhm. So you be thinking about your closing thought, and we're going to go to Stacey. And what do you want to leave our participants with today? I know the time has flown by, which we knew it would. Destiny told us, oh, I do 90 minutes. We could have done way longer, but hopefully this is just the first time. So Stacey, what do you want to leave us thinking about today?
I really want people to start picturing their children's brain and the networks in their nervous system. And to remember that when children come into the world, they don't come here with a logic. They don't come here with a narrative. They're all sensory, and they experience the world through their sensory receptors, their eyes, their nose, their mouth, their ears, their skin. And you and I were talking about this yesterday. The first 1,000 days of life are the most important. It's that 0 to 3 period. And your child's brain develops in relation to your environment. And 80% of the brain develops in that 1,000 days of life. And you, as the parent, the primary caretaker, you tell your child's brain how to wire. And the child's brain has to figure out, is this a safe space? Is this somebody I can attach to? Is it warm? Is it consistent? Or, that brain has to adapt to stress. Is this person always going to be yelling, threatening me, hitting me? Is this somebody I got to fear, right? And it's going to adapt to that. It's non-negotiable. And so you have to think about the kind of person that you want your child to become. And a lot of this toxic stress, the beating, the yelling, it's so counterintuitive. And as a people, we can decide whether we want to raise resistance or raise order. Now, we can create a different kind of future for our families and our communities based on what we do to our children. And our true emancipation, our liberatory future depends on how we treat our children's brains, how we tell it to grow, how we nurture it, the messages that we send to it. So I just want people to, every time you feel some anger, picture the brain, go underneath the flesh, try to like think about that and be gentle with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Destiny, what do you want to leave us thinking about?
I would say that something that I hear a lot is that intentional parenting, it's not, it doesn't fit their personality, or it doesn't fit, who they are as a parent. They feel like they have to conform into some different person, because that's what they see on social media. They see, the sweet little, mouse voice, and they don't identify with that. And so what I want to leave everyone with is what I tell people often, is that intentional parenting doesn't have to change who you are, but it will change who you are. It doesn't mean your personality has to change. It doesn't mean that you have to fit into a box. It doesn't mean that you have to conform to be like someone else. It means that you are operating as your best self. And so in the ways that it will change you is not a negative way. It's not even a way that you might even feel, from the beginning. It's not a way that will make you feel like you're imitating someone else. It changes you in a way that makes you aware of what your best self looks like. And it makes it more attainable. It makes you start to be intentional in every area of your life. It creates mindfulness about yourself and your surroundings, and not only your children, but your other relationships, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your coworkers, with your friends. You start to look at life differently. And so I always try to inspire people with, it doesn't have to change who you are. You don't have to change your personality. The ways that it will change you is going to be in the best way possible, not just for your children, but for yourself.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You both, like I said, phenomenal women, brilliant minds, brilliant hearts and spirits. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today and just sharing your knowledge and wisdom and experience. People have asked, will the webinar be shared? Yes, we will share the recording, and we'll also send out information about both of our panelists, their websites, their books. We referenced Destiny's first book. She just came out with a children's book called Boundaries Are for Everyone, and it's beautifully illustrated. Just want to thank you for helping elevate the conversation and helping protect children, because honest to goodness, the state of the world depends on how we treat our children. Right. So we're just grateful for the time. Thank you to my colleagues, our comms team, and thank you for everybody for tuning in today and being with us. This is the first time we've done this. It's very exciting. And I hope we'll be able to do it again. So be well, everybody. It's Child Abuse Prevention Month, but honestly, we need to be preventing child abuse every day of the year. So hashtag Protect Kids 365. That's what we do. Be well, everybody. Thank you.